I don't remember celebrating Father's Day for my dad. You could argue that back then it wasn't as commercialized or given much attention as it is now. But away from Father's Day, I don't remember taking the time to look at or celebrate my father's fatherhood journey. We all just received it. He did his duties without fuss. He was present when he could, but not really, since he traveled for work for the majority of my childhood. And anytime he spent away from work was focused on his friends or relatives. We just knew he was there, and we treasured the little time that we had. When we became parents, I held out hope that my husband wouldn't be that kind of dad, that he wouldn't excuse himself from the sleepless nights, or that he would gladly change diapers, play with the kids, take them to hospital, do drop-offs, discipline them, be invested in all the choices that we make, and whatever else comes our way. I hope that he would be truly present, truly involved. And he is. This is a different type of fatherhood, not one I experienced, but one that questions societal norms by normalizing men being fathers, men being parents, not just that authoritative figure or the guy that pays school fees. There's a lot to be said in demystifying fatherhood and what it looks like in this day and age. I have committed myself to using Father's Day as one way to highlight stories from fathers. I know when I did it with my husband back in episode 4 or 5 of season 1, I learned how differently we coped or handled our transition into parenthood. And in honor of this year's Father's Day, I bring you another story from a dad I truly admire. I stumbled upon his blog some time back, which unfortunately isn't up right now. But it had story after story of his transition into fatherhood. His words were so raw and foreign to me because I had never seen a dad take us through his emotions or thoughts, at least not publicly. As foreign as it was for me, it felt relatable and oddly refreshing, something that helped me appreciate my husband's journey, and I could even say the mystery of my fathers. This is episode 9 of Mama Tales Season 3. I'm your host, Sally Kure. Here is said story. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mama Tales podcast, and today is another special one. It is our Father's Day special, and I invited a really awesome guest, a dad I really admire, and someone whose wife was actually on the podcast in season 2, right? Yeah, it was season 2. So I have a little bit about that story, but now we're going to listen to it from Daddy's angle. Yeah. So before we start, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and your family.
First, thank you.
Yes.
It's nice. Like, I didn't know I was an awesome guest. But, my name is Sed, as you rightfully said. I am a lot of things. But I think most people know me from creating content as a dad. So I have a handle, Growing Father. I do a series of lives called Two Dads Talking. Outside of that, I'm also in communications, marketing, and I have a small makeshift studio. Like, I'm saying makeshift because this is a serious setup.
This is
not
else.
What I have. Yeah, we have.
If you came to my house, it would not look like this.
Yeah, we have a few people with a few equipments. This is not what we have.
Yeah.
But So I work in the content space, and I guess my full-time job is being a dad, and then I freelance at everything else. Yeah.
So I know you, when I first came across your profile, you had a website.
I did.
You did have a website.
I did.
With a pretty interesting blog.
Yes. Oh, wow.
But I'll ask about that a little later. Yeah. But for now, we are going to delve deep into you being a dad, because it's all about Father's Day.
Awesome.
I'm trying to make this a tradition. The very first time I had my husband on, because also I didn't really have a lot of guests. So
I need to look for that. You know, like I
Yeah.
went through all the guests. I was like, am I the first dude on
No,
here?
he was that.
Oh,
Probably
man.
episode 4. I think it was
Okay.
episode
So I didn't
4
get
or
that far
3.
back.
Yeah. I think you should just go and listen to him. But so it's nice to have another dude on the podcast.
Yay.
So we're going to get into fatherhood, right? And the first question I'll ask you is, did you know that you always wanted to be a dad?
No.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think both my wife and myself did not want to be parents in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not like we're child averse. I think we're both really good with kids, but we both were hesitant for many reasons. The main one just being you don't want to fail at something that
Yeah.
important. So I was set on being the cool uncle. I was very set on like I'm gonna do everything I need to do to be the
Yeah.
rich cool uncle.
Yeah.
And then we found out. We actually found out. I think she talked about it on the podcast, but we found out very much by mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very funny day where she left with like going to get an X-ray and came back with a blood test saying, "Guess what?"
Yeah,
And,
there's a baby coming. And I want to go back there. I see you trying to just like
gloss past
gloss past that situation. But I realized a lot of these things,
Yeah.
there's two sides to the story, right? There's her side, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
No pressure. But
Yeah.
but like take me back to that feeling of that moment where you realized you're going to be a dad.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm trying to put myself back in that space.
Yeah.
So basically, this was early 2017. And I was mentally I was in a different space.
Okay.
I was my company I'd recently left employment. I say recently, a few years before I'd left employment. So my company had just started picking up, like barely started picking up. I mean, like we were barely now just being able to pay ourselves as the directors, and we just landed a fairly large, contract, and it seemed like things were on the up and up.
Yeah.
But those final days of a contract where there's a lot of tension because
Yeah.
like things haven't been signed, but
Yeah.
numbers are being thrown around, and like so we're in that space. And in between all of that, I was also trying to think because the past year had been really intense for I think we talked about this
Yeah,
before, but the
yeah.
work-life balance had shifted, and also. For me, Zayn had become my sugar mommy. She was kind of taking care of the bills while I wasn't making any money.
Yeah.
So I was trying to also just think like, what can I do to now kind of, kind of celebrate her, say thank you, be more here. Like, how
Yeah.
can we refocus on family? Because I've spent so much time just out there chasing a dream, and now I need to come back home. And this is where the story, got very real very quickly. So I remember the day because I didn't tell her, but it was the day that I was supposed to go and actually sign the contract.
Oh, wow.
But, I got to the office and immediately they were like, oh, yeah, some changes came in from the team in the US and blah, blah, blah. And one reason or another, this has to go back to procurement. So it's like another 2-3 months. And I just immediately felt that crushing spirit of,
It's not working.
yeah, but I was like, let me not say anything, because when she left in the morning, she'd been complaining about this pain that had been there for like years. So I had no clue what to expect because it's a pain that's been there for a long time. So I was just like, it's whatever. So anyway, I go to the office, things go the way they go, and I just said, I'm just gonna go back home. There was some work being done, there was some things being fixed, and I figured let me just go and help out with that. Also, just because I started getting things fixed with the assumption that money's coming in soon.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
in my
fair
head,
enough.
I'm just like, I need to now manage this process and make sure I don't get overcharged 1 shilling.
Yeah.
So I'm back home and, helping the Fundis with this, that, and the other. And then she just walked back in and just like shot me a look, and immediately everything just stopped, because in my head I'm like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Whatever she's about to say is just
It's
not okay.
Yeah.
And then she walked up and just like told me, because there's a house that's just kind of full of people, and she was like, here, and just gave me like this, I think it was an envelope or I don't know. I don't even think it was in an envelope. I think it was just
It's
like
the
the
paper.
folded
Yeah.
test results. And then she sat down and made sure that I opened it, because normally she gives me things and I just put them to the side.
Yeah.
And she just sat down and made sure that I opened it. I even remember how our couches were set up. I sat down, I looked at it, I looked at her, and then looked at it again. I don't remember what the first thing I said was,
Yeah.
but I remember starting to like, and again, we talked about this. I
Yeah.
just remember saying, I'm going to stay quiet until I know what to say. So I looked back at her and I'm like, okay. And she said, okay. I'm like, okay. And I think she went away to like get something to drink, or not like alcohol, like some
Yeah, yeah.
water or something. And the whole time I'm just thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? And I remember just saying, don't plan this out. This is a real life moment. Just have a real life reaction. And the minute we had like the room to ourselves, I just remember telling her, this, I mean, we didn't plan for this, but this is,
happening.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm here for you. I'm here for the baby. Whatever we need, whatever you need, say it, it'll be done. And we talked and talked and talked and joked. And I remember that was the beginning of, did I ever tell you about the poop pledge?
No.
You read my blog, so you
Wait.
should know about the poop pledge.
Is it the one that you said that you'll always be the one who changes all
Yeah,
the...
so I made a lot of
Yeah,
commitments
remember.
that day, and one of them was I will change every poopy diaper,
Wow.
and then that became a thing. So
Did you actually change every puppy diaper?
like every single time I was around, yeah. And
Yeah.
and I mean, for the first baby, it got to a point where I would just be like, "It's 2 a.m. Please don't ask me to do this." But I tried.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't. It was just one of those things where everything disappeared. Like I think, as in that moment, all those other stresses, all that worldly stuff
Yeah.
disappeared. And the big change I remember was, one, my relationship with her changed because I started being more conscious of just how I interact with her, but more so the type of relationship we have. And it made me question a lot of things about how I behaved. But the second thing was, it also made me shift my whole perspective on life. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody says this, but yeah, it gave me a moment to just kind of pause and say what really matters. Like, does this contract really matter, or should I just be grateful that I'm self-employed and I can be home for this? I don't
Yeah.
have to look for paternity leave, and I can actually just plan to be present and spend time reading and figuring this out, and all these type of things.
Yeah.
And then the third thing was, I was just genuinely scared because it was an election year.
Yes, 2017.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I just remember thinking, awesome. Like, this
Great
is
timing.
yeah, great timing,
Yeah.
kid. You're coming in right after the elections, so
Yeah, we don't know.
yeah, just make sure you have your stuff together. Like,
Yeah.
and then doing the math. Like, the minute you're told, oh yeah, she's X number of weeks down the line, then you start saying,
This is
what
when
date
it's
is this
happened.
going to be? Yeah, and then I remember doing all that type of initial calculations, and the next few days were a blur. So you're trying
Wait,
to
so you're doing all these calculations
as we're talking.
as you're talking?
Yeah,
Oh.
so like, because we had a long chat. Like,
Yeah.
obviously we had the room to ourselves for a little while. We had the short conversation on like, whatever you need, I'm here. And then after everybody left, we had more time to ourselves. Like, we had the whole evening, because like at that time we didn't have a live-in nanny.
Yeah.
So she left, everyone left, and we had the whole evening to kind of just talk. And in that time is when I'm doing all this math and doing all these calculations. And I remember thinking at some point that, given the EDD, there's a possibility that my son's birthday and my mom's birthday would be the same day. And then I thought, oh crap, my mom. I have to tell her.
You have to tell your mom.
And
Yeah.
it was a lot of things. It was just like so many thoughts kind of raced in that time. But honestly, the next morning I was nothing but happy. Like,
Okay.
I think for the rest of the pregnancy, it was, I went through the phases you go through. And it's very, very real. Like, the mental changes, I think we don't talk about it enough, but
Yeah.
dads go through quite
Yeah.
a lot of mental shifts, and a lot of times they just tuck it in. But I went through those, but overall I was just very happy and
And
excited.
I actually want to just dive into that because
Okay.
it's an experience that I can't relate to. And even when I talk to moms talk about like their pregnancy to moments just before they became moms, I kind of know how we are feeling, how we are thriving, how we're doing this. But I remember when I had my husband on, there's some things that he was saying, and I was like, really? Was that such a big thing? And for him was, I think, finding out he's going to be a girl dad. That freaked him out to the
Oh,
point where
yeah.
he
Yeah.
he almost like I remember he was quite reserved for a long time. Just we'd just be having dinner, and then one time just like, but then now do girls do this, and then
Okay.
3 weeks later, okay, but then so I realized in his head it was always churning. These were the things that he was thinking about, and we were also at that point in our lives where, I like I told you, I had just quit my job,
Yeah, I
so now
remember.
we're like one salary. Now we're
One
gonna
income
have like
household. Yeah.
there's gonna be like a little one coming
Yeah.
in. So I'm throwing it to you, right? What was that space like for you? Because you had what? A couple, I mean, maybe not 9 months, but
No,
eight,
no,
seven
not 9
months.
months. I think we had like 8 or like yeah,
Exactly.
because
Like
yeah, it was a very short time between that and her ballooning. So by the way, at that point there
ballooning.
were like no symptoms.
Yeah.
There was no sign.
Yeah.
She didn't even seem slightly bloated. And then it's like immediately we found out her body went cool, and
It
just like
happens all the time.
yeah,
It happens
two
all the
weeks.
time.
it
Yeah.
was it was very visible. So in terms of what the journey was like, whew, that's a
And this
tricky
can
one.
be even with like both kids, right?
So yeah, I think it's different with both kids.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, I have two. There's my son who was 2017, and then there's my daughter who was 2020. Both of them decided to pick seminal moments in our country's existence to kind of be born.
Yeah.
So pandemic and election. So yay, they just really had no respect for stress. But anyway, with my son, I went through that phase. I even wrote about it. So one of my first immediate outlets, because like I mentioned, I've been doing the content thing for a while. I say this so much because I do this in like my professional life, but my first blog was in like 2004. So my outlet has been blogging
Yeah.
for a long time. So when I found out, I think maybe a week later, I had a blog up and
The one that
daddy.co.k.
daddy.co.k. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wrote about finding like you can follow the
Yes.
journey.
Yeah.
I don't think the blog is up anymore. So if you need those things, I'll find a way to surface them. But anyway, so I wrote about all of it, and one of the first blogs I wrote was about what if it's a girl, because we
Yeah.
didn't know. We didn't know, and it was a bit too early to find out. And just I don't want to sound preachy, but one of the things that did immediately was that changed a lot in terms of how I understood gender dynamics, because I didn't really necessarily think, diapers or, how does this work and the
Yeah.
biology and like
Yeah.
any of the other stuff. All I immediately started thinking was, why am I so much more scared
If it's a
for
girl.
her
Yeah.
than I would be if it's, if I have a son. And I think that reality just became really stark and really real. And I had to write about it and just talk about how, in my mind, my there's a thing that was going around Instagram like 2 years ago where someone was saying, I knew that if I had a son, I would do everything. I would die for him, right?
Yeah.
But if I had a daughter, I would kill for her.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice way to kind of sum up how, that feeling comes up, where you start realizing, one, there's a life coming into this world and you're responsible for that life. And two, there's an extent to what you would do for that life,
Yeah.
but also what you would need to give for that life. And my stress was never on what I had, because again, I'd already decided that need be, I will sell bone marrow.
Yeah.
Okay, like whatever needs to happen will
Stop it.
happen. I
Yeah.
will hustle and get this done.
Yeah.
But then there's only so much you can do financially that stops safety or security or sexism or racism or Islamophobia or anything from impacting your children. And that's the part where like the helplessness started seeping
Sinking
in.
yeah.
And me trying to think, how am I going to protect the kids? How am I going to protect their mother? How am I going to make sure that I'm a good role model? I need to get rid of all my bad habits. I need to make sure, like, that process, that cycle was a lot. Like, it's a load that I don't think dads manage well.
Yeah.
And then they also don't talk to each other about it. So that was part of what changed my blog into let me get on social. But this was after the fact. Like, at that point, I didn't want to talk to people. But later on, looking back, is when I was like, I wish I had someone to talk to. I wish there was like a place to go to. And there's
Yeah.
all these like, mom bloggers and mom
Moms have it,
influencers.
like,
Yeah, moms have a network.
Moms have a network. And I would
Yeah.
say the only time I really sought for communities when I became a mom. And it was all around me. And I was finding it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at Facebook, at a website I hadn't used for eons. But because now as a mother, I have that. I have an app. I have social.
I mean, I used to joke with, I was handling a client who did, they sell baby products. Just really cannot say things in public. But anyway, so
Yeah.
I have a client who sells baby products, and every campaign we do, it's just like mom, 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 mom. The minute I found out I was going to have a kid, and I got so deeply engrossed in trying to prepare. You've met Zane, so you
Yes.
know we are over preparers. She researches the way she researches. I research the way I research. It just got to a point where I was so deeply involved in anything baby related that I started feeling a sense of like ownership of this area. Like I should have a voice. I should have a say here.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting in a room and planning a campaign, and then you say something, and they're like, no, because you're a guy.
That, yeah.
It started, that again also started hitting me, because I realized there's a social or a socialization element to why a lot of dads are not responsive and they're not active.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with, you will be very gently shooed out of the room all the time. Very gently asked to leave, very quietly told this
Yeah.
isn't for you, so many times. And I say that, I'm not saying that hypothetically as like something I was
seen
thinking
it.
of at the time. Like,
Yeah.
this is something I've lived with, where I go for a family function, my kid poops himself, I say, okay, let me go change him, and they're like, no, where's his mom? I'm like,
But
I'm the one with the diaper
Yeah,
bag. I'm going to go change him. And even worse with my daughter.
Yeah.
Because then if I say, oh yeah, let me go change her, they're like, no. And I get it. I understand. I'm not saying I don't understand why.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
But at the same time, it also has an impact where, if that's done continuously, you remove yourself from the
You do.
conversation so
Yeah.
that you stop being told no. And this happens in so many settings. Like, the number of times I would go to hospital and I want to sit in to understand how the pregnancy is going, and the nurses will be like, okay, she can come in. I'm like, what
But
am
I'm
I
also
supposed to do?
here.
Just sit
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
Like, that's my baby as well. I want to understand. And you have to walk into these rooms. You have to force yourself to be there. And I think that bit takes an extra amount of strength that people don't prepare to like tap into, because it's an exhausting process.
It
I
is.
can only imagine how it is for moms. I know for dads as well, like, there's a mental toll. That's not the time you want to be told you need to dig deeper.
Yeah.
So that you can be more present when society doesn't want you to be. You
Yeah.
need to try harder. That's not the time to be told
Yeah,
that, especially for your first child. So yeah, speaking to the journey, I think there was a lot of that. I never really talk about it just because I don't know how to approach it, but I'm pretty sure I went through paternal postpartum depression.
Interesting.
Because it was like there was an extent to which my relationship with my first child was not easy. Zane talks about it. Again, her version is funnier, so if you want the funny version,
We'll go through
look up
No, but
Plays
we
a
want
Child's
your
Work.
version.
But yeah, mine was a bit hard, because like, my son was born and he did not want to talk to anybody or see anybody or smell anybody that wasn't his mom. And I know that
Yep.
sounds like I'm exaggerating. Our family members could not look at him, not carry him, not look at him.
Look.
Yeah, and it was really genuinely difficult. But for me, it was super hard because it, like, if I touch him, he just explodes. And there's a lot of how do I put this gently? There's a lot of damage that's done by
Yeah.
rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pain that's kind of held in silence, and having to sit out, like, think of it this way: if you've been told by everybody, just back off,
Back off. Yeah.
and then you get told by your child, leave me alone.
Leave me alone.
There's an extent to which it doesn't matter what anybody else tells you at this point about how good of a job you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're really trying. So you feel like you're not doing anything. So I remember being in those pits for a little while, but then I also remember making the conscious decision of, I'm going to research every single dad who's ever had a tough time with their kid, and I'm going to figure out how I'm going to break this child. I refuse to be kicked out of my own life. So, I forced my way into it. And I talked about it online, but like, I had to do this thing of like making it part of his schedule where invariably you wake up, it's me. We start the day together. We end the day together every day. And I used to tell Zayn, like, just sit this out. You're going to hear a lot of just sit this out.
Yeah.
It's going to be daddy time in the morning, daddy time in the evening, every day.
Yeah.
And 5.5 years later, it's still daddy time in the morning.
Okay.
And daddy.
Okay.
Well, not so much in the morning anymore because I'm on night shift now. But I still wake him up.
Okay.
So
and
we still.
Is it a little bit more receptive?
Oh no, he's a lot more receptive.
Okay.
Yeah, we're cool right now.
Okay.
And also we're in the dad season. Like, he turned 5 and I became the coolest parent in the world.
And then mom was just like, ugh.
Yeah, but you can imagine. Like, can you imagine
It's
doing
hard.
something
It's
for
a
5
lot-
years?
that's a
That's
lot of
madness. Like, bath time for 5 years and like
crazy.
mornings for 5 and breakfast and
Yeah.
it's a lot. So
Wow.
I say, can you imagine? Like, you're not a mom. I'm so sorry.
No, but listen. No, but I'm imagining. I'm imagining because I it was something that's it's very important because on this side we want dads to be super, super present, right? Because it's a big load. And many times I sit down and I feel like it's very unfair for me to be expected to be the primary parent for every single thing that this child will need. Immediately they come out of my uterus.
Yeah.
It's like you have the milk, you have the boobs, you have everything.
Yeah.
He's crying. I mean, she's crying. She needs this. She needs like it was mom. And you want the dad to step in, but rightfully so, we've been conditioned to the fact that dads. I don't know why, but they're not supposed to be in this space.
Yeah.
To the point they're probably not even allowed to be there, and I think that's a perspective that I'm just now seeing. That you're not allowed to be there. You want to be there. I want you to be there, but at the same time, I'm still pushing. Like, everyone's still pushing your way, so you're making it's a really conscious effort.
Yeah.
And not a lot of men do that.
No, and I think so. I think there's two things.
Yeah.
One, there's like everything we've talked about so far in terms of like being pushed away, but then there's also a very huge element of. I say this with caution, just because I know some people did grow up in 2-parent homes, and I'm not talking about you if you grew up in a 2-parent home with like a very active parent in your father, but like a lot of us grew up in single-parent homes or broken homes, right? So the model that you have for fatherhood is broken to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you also have to look at the stories that are told about fatherhood. We are talking about the importance of stories, but like one of the big things that happens when you watch movies and you watch cartoons and you grow up with a certain picture of what a dad is, in the best case scenario, is that becomes your model, like literally your role model, like how you take the role of fatherhood and how you act it out. And what was the role model for fatherhood growing up? The best case was like Uncle Phil in Fresh Prince, right?
Yeah.
But even in that case, he was mostly he had a slightly elevated role. There was a certain, like, he was an amazing dad, but then he was also certain gender tropes that you expect. He was the provider. He wasn't like involved in. He was actually more active in the boys' lives in
Yeah.
Carlton and Will's life than he was in like the girls' lives. Like there were certain things that weren't perfect about the
Yeah.
depiction of him,
Yeah.
but that was the best case scenario. And in that case, he was also the uncle, right? He wasn't the dad. The dad had left. The dad
Yeah.
actually left again during the show.
Exactly, yeah.
But then you look at all the other depictions, it's always the funny guy, it's always the, or the frustrated one.
Clueless. I don't know what
Yeah,
I'm
the
doing.
drunk, the this,
Yeah,
the that.
yeah.
Like there's always these ideas that he's everything except a parent. And what's happened because of that is that we're now in this age, I think post 2010, where we're questioning roles more.
Yep.
And fatherhood is one of those things that suffers. I am so sorry, I'm going to get into like big concepts again, but like
No, please, feel
fatherhood is
free.
one of those
Yeah.
things that suffers from intersectionality because we are trying to figure out men. At the same time, we're trying to figure out parents.
Yeah.
And as we're trying to figure out parents and we're trying to shift from less responsive ways of parenting into responsive parenting and gentle parenting and, things that are more advised by science, we're also trying to figure out what role
Does
a father plays.
in that mix, yep.
Exactly. But at the same time, we're also trying to figure out what men are and what counts as responsible manhood and responsive manhood because Me Too just happened. Like, let's not act like it's been, 20 decades of this.
Yeah,
It just happened,
yeah.
A lot of people are just figuring out relationships and how to play in those spaces. So when you start talking about fatherhood, a lot of times what tends to happen is all these things that were previously ambiguous and nobody wanted to deal with come up at the same time.
Yeah.
So for most people, I think it's easier to just not address it. Inaction is the best action because you don't want to do the wrong thing. So you lean into what's set. And what's
Yeah,
set is
yeah.
culture, what's set is religion, what's set is, societal norms and standards, right? Trying to be different is not necessarily the way to go.
Yeah.
So in my case, I think I kind of am able to try to be different because my wife also doesn't care much about norms. So it's good to have that person there. But then also I grew up with a feminist mother. I
Yeah.
did not grow up with my dad. So I don't have that model, but I had people I looked up to and people who I would see and kind of watch and aspire to. But then the more you learn, the more you realize that even they were imperfect. Like Uncle Phil was very high on my list, but then the older I got, the more I was like, not
their
perfect.
flaws, yeah.
Yeah,
Their flaws,
everyone
yeah.
had their flaws. And before I called my page Growing Father, I wanted to call it Flawed Fathers. Right? Because I really, really genuinely believe that we need to accept that people are flawed.
Yeah.
People are people, and people are flawed. And starting from that point, we then deconstruct what roles are. Not starting from the point of, I need to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then go there. Because if we take it from the imperfection standpoint, it's easier for us to have a conversation as parents. It's easier for us to have a conversation as men. It's easier for us to have a conversation
Yeah.
as people in general, because then we're able to accept that we all have a lot of things that we need to learn, and we need to learn them from each other.
That was the biggest bubble that burst in my head when I realized that adults have flaws. Because I thought, you people know what you do. You know
Yeah,
what I
no,
mean?
no.
Like, I mean, surely, until I got there, and I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know what I'm
No,
doing.
no,
I'm
no.
just-
Adulthood is I was
it's a
about to
scam.
curse. Yeah,
No,
it's
but
a scam.
It's a scam. It's a very big scam. It's a big scam that you find out when you're there and you're like, ugh,
Yeah.
maybe I had it great as a child. I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Sure,
right?
sure. Sorry, I rambled.
No.
Yeah.
It's perfect because it comes to a question that I had, which was, I wanted to ask you about like your father, but knowing that wasn't a reality that existed, do you think?
I mean, he's around, and I know where he is.
Okay,
Yeah.
feels
I
like there's a
think.
lot to unpack.
Like, I'm fairly certain I know where
I'm
he
just
is.
like, yeah, but then did that affect the type of father you are?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
How?
it did. So, no, I'm not. I have no Bile. I think, let me start there.
Okay.
In case you're watching this, I do not hate you. I think the thing that it did for me was, I'm going to take a step back.
Take a step
I
back.
think there are two ways you can learn from somebody. You can learn from their presence and you can learn from their absence. And it's very important to kind of be able to formulate how you learn from those things.
Yeah.
When, let's say friendship, we'll pick the relationship of friendship. When you have your friends around you, you learn certain things about what it's like to be liked or to be loved or to be respected or
Yeah.
to be appreciated or to be wanted or to be needed, and those things come from the active presence, right? But then when they're away from you, you learn what it is to like yearn and to miss
Yeah.
and to you know, kind of plan for seeing somebody and to think about someone when they're not thinking about you. So you develop skills like empathy and you know, selflessness comes from those moments where you actually start to like see that ego doesn't mean anything because somebody somewhere has a piece of you and they're not here.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, yeah, it's kind of like having a stencil. If someone is present, you can draw around them and get an idea of what's there. But if someone is absent, there's a hole there.
Yeah.
And you can see what shape that hole forms. What my dad was he was very inconsistent growing up. So it's not that he was like not there, it's just that he wasn't a regular fixture in our lives. You know, he was the stereotypical, like, again, this is kind of messed up, but this was the story of like the 80s and
Yeah,
90s, you
yeah.
know, oh yeah, dad says he's going to come on Sunday and then he doesn't show up, or sometimes he shows up. You could roll
You
dice,
would know.
honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could flip a coin, and sometimes he was there, sometimes he wasn't, sometimes it was good, sometimes it wasn't, you know, it was one of those things. And then of course I left the country very young, and after that it was basically like we saw each other again when I was a teenager.
Wow.
And then we didn't see each other again until I was in like my 20s. And what that did for me was I had moments, like long moments, where I could go away and see other people with their dads and see like the dad shaped hole missing in my life.
Yep.
So I had a very clear idea of, if I ever, and again, I didn't want to have kids.
Yeah,
That's
but-
part of what formulated that
Yeah.
whole thought.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I ever do, then I will never do X, I'll never do Y, right? Instead of saying I will do X, I will do Y, it was always I will never do this, I will never do that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think that changed, like I mentioned with my son, part of the resilience of me saying
I'll be that.
every morning,
myself.
yeah, every morning, I'll be late for work if I have to, but
Yeah.
every morning I am
Yeah.
staying with you until you calm down and we can have like a proper moment, me and you. And even if you don't calm down, I will still be there. I will honor your feelings, I will honor everything about this, but I will stay there. You will know that I am here and I will always be here.
Yeah.
And it has to get to that point. Part of what drove that was that I knew I never wanted to leave him with that absence. I wanted him to have an absence that had structure.
Yeah.
If I'm away, it's fine because you know I'll come back.
Come back. Yeah.
Right? I don't want it to ever be one of those things where, like, someone asked me, when's the last time you saw your dad? And I was like, this was...
thinking about it. Yeah.
I nenever want that. I never want that
Yeah.
ambiguity of, like, you know, I need you to be like, no, he's been gone for like a day, but he's coming back, you know? The thing that I remember specifically with my son, the day I knew that I'd turned that corner, I had to go for a trip to like Nandi Hills for another client who's like does tea, and it was the first time I'd been away for more than 24 hours. So I went, and I remember when I came back, it was, I think it was like at night, and he'd already slept. And in the morning, when he woke up, he didn't ask for mom. He called dad.
Oh.
And I just remember saying, like, he still screamed and, you know, still
But-
bloody murder.
but it was like,
but
this
he
was
called
you.
for me.
Yeah.
And I just remember going, done.
Talking. Yeah.
Yeah, there I'm good.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't even, like, he had a way of calling his mom and a way of calling me. Like, this wasn't when he was like, dad. No. This was just when there was a sound for mom and there was a sound for dad.
Oh my God.
And it was the sound
Yeah,
for dad. And I
yeah.
just remember going, yeah, Okay, cool. We're making progress here, and this is what I want. And then all of a sudden, you start deconstructing all these things that you grew up with. So yeah, basically, I think I learned what I didn't want to be, and set some rules for myself on what not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 10 Commandments more so than a rule book. Because like the 10 Commandments are basically a list of things not to do.
Yeah,
Do not do this.
So
There's
it's
no
like,
like
so
be a
then
nice
what can I
person.
do?
It's just like don't do
Don't.
this.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
more that than the two
Okay.
commandments. Yeah,
You spend a lot of time with the kids, right?
a decent amount of
A
time.
decent amount of time.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy doing most with them?
Oh, this is gonna be really creepy.
Okay.
So I enjoy watching them playing with each other. Because my favorite thing, absolutely my favorite thing about parenting, without question, is the relationship my kids have with each other.
Yeah.
Without fail, that is my favorite thing. So regardless of what we're doing, I just want to watch them,
Yeah, play with
interacting
each
with
other,
each other,
yeah.
because it just warms my heart. But I have a series of things that I've put up, like I call them daddy days. Well, they call them daddy days.
Yeah.
When we'll just say, okay, morning to evening, it's me and you guys, and we're gonna figure out what we're doing today, and then they'll come up with a list of things. Oh, let's go here, let's do this, let's do that. Yeah, I don't think there's any one of those that I'd pick as a specific favorite. Yeah, I'm really drawing a blank. Just as long as we're spending time together, I'm good.
Yeah.
And it's like uninterrupted, intentional time.
I think with my son and daughter, we're at that point where if the two of them are alone,
Is it fights?
it's a fight. It's bound to.
Oh yeah, no, the
But
fights
then
are frequent.
But then there are moments.
Yeah.
Like this morning, there was just like a
Did they
a
like
little
hug or
moment
something?
where my daughter came up to my son and asked him about a certain light that's somewhere and gave him. So we did start this thing with my daughter where we nose bump, get really close, make a nice whiny noise as we nose bump. And she started doing
cute.
that with the brother, and I was like, oh, bless my heart, right? But that lasts like maybe 30 seconds, and then we're back to
And then no,
But
they fight.
Yeah,
Oof, man.
yeah.
And like my daughter, so my daughter's middle name is my mom's name, and my mom is many things, many things. But one of the things she is absolutely is like a fighter.
Okay.
She is one of the strongest women in the world.
Yeah.
If you ever watch this.
Which she will, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure she will.
Yeah,
I'm sure she'll stumble on this. But like, she's a lot of things. She's a teacher. She's just thought leader, lots of amazing things. But she also has fought for people's rights and fought for herself.
Wow.
And my daughter is 100% that. Like, she will fight for nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. She just pick a cause and decide, no, I'm not a baby today. And
Yeah.
anyone who calls me baby is going to get it. And then her brother's like, but you're my baby sister. And immediately it's off.
It's done.
Yeah, it's
okay,
done.
okay.
Like, that's the rest of the day is just going to be fights. So, yeah, I get that. But then
Yeah.
I still love those moments,
Okay.
like, as long as it's genuine interaction, like they're having real...
So it doesn't have to be happy.
It doesn't have to be happy,
as long as
perfect
it's-
moments.
yeah.
I like the happy, perfect moments.
Don't feel-
They make
yeah.
nice wallpapers.
Yes.
But then
Yes.
the thing I like most is knowing that they have a sincere relationship with each other.
Yeah.
And that they're going to factor towards each other's growth. So they genuinely care enough to correct each other when they think someone is,
Yeah.
that for me, silence is the real absence. If they're not interacting,
There's something.
yeah.
And on the flip side, are there things that you don't enjoy doing with your kids?
I like working in silence.
Okay.
So I genuinely, and again, this is one of those things where I don't know how Zayn and myself got together, because we both are very, just leave me alone. Like, we like our alone time. And then we ended up together.
Yeah.
And then we ended up with roommates, which is weird.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times where I'm just like, I just want to have coffee and
alone.
like a slice of toast. I don't need all this energy right now. Meanwhile, it's like volume 12 on this side and volume 20 on this side, and
But don't they actually find those moments? I feel like my daughter is very great at finding moments where I need silence and to be
oh
alone.
no, they know They
And
know.
they're like,
I've
I'm gonna
decided.
be there
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I think there's two superpowers babies are born with.
Yeah.
The first one is that they're able to disarm you at any given
Yep.
point. Like, it does not matter how angry you are at your child, they can find a way to just be like, I love you. And then everything stops.
Yes.
Yeah, the world goes quiet. All the wildfires in the world just stop, and lightning stops striking, and your moment is just there.
Yeah.
The second thing is they know how to do the exact opposite of
Yep.
that
Yep.
and just switch everything, like
Yep.
turn everything all the way up. They know how to push the button.
I feel like they even dance when they're doing it. They're like, if I do this,
Yeah, there's a
and if I do
musical
that.
way in
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
yeah,
Just,
I've
like,
noticed
just
that. Like,
push a
they'll
little bit more here, and then just.
they slide into the room like, "Hi, mom," and and just
know exactly
stop.
what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
I can
Yeah, I
see
know.
you from
Yeah.
over there with your little. Just stop it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself in your kids?
I didn't for a while.
Okay.
So both my kids, if you've ever seen them, which
Yeah.
I'm sorry for everyone on social media, just you
Yeah.
won't, but you'll see the back of their heads.
Yeah.
But for those of you who have their photocopy of my wife,
Like there.
yeah, they
They are.
both just photocopy. I think the only looks they get from me are. I don't think they get any looks from me. Maybe their ears and most of their internal organs.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
things you can't see. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Like, my
Yeah.
son has my sinuses, and my daughter, I don't know, maybe like my pancreas.
Oh my God, that's really searching. That's really.
Yeah.
You're really tough time.
I didn't know. I'm really like, I'm reaching. They have to have something, right?
Yeah,
Like, the
yeah.
DNA says
Somewhere,
that 50% should
yeah.
be me. So I figure it's like maybe the toes. Actually, yeah, probably the toes
Yeah.
for one of them. But it took me a while to start seeing what things are there, and some of it I don't know if it's learned because they're around me or it's who they are in their personalities. But more so with my daughter than with my son, there's a lot of similarities in certain things.
Okay.
Like, my daughter from day zero is huge on music, just listening to music. My son is big on dancing, and that's his mom. He jams out to everything. But
Yeah.
like, my daughter is just big on listening to things, and like that we formed a relationship around that. So the same way I used to like stay with my son and try to like,
Yeah.
we try to do things that he's interested in, and draw and build and engineer things and whatnot, things that I also enjoy doing. So at least there's like a genuine passion that we're sharing. With my daughter, it was like when she was a baby, and her mom needs to sleep, I could almost always just turn on music, and we could sit in silence
Wow.
for an hour. Well, I say silence, but she's being quiet, and us
Yeah.
just listening to like jazz
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
for like an hour. So there's small things like that. There's small moments where I just catch bits of myself, and I'm like, I don't know if this is learned or this
Or
is who
it's-
you are,
Yeah.
but it's cool.
I think over time you'll start seeing them a lot more.
Yeah.
I told you I was in the hospital this morning with my.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. With my son. And I went into triage. He was on a call, so I left him behind. Went into triage. And the first thing this nurse said, wow, your son looks like the dad. Like, even it's like twins. It's copy. I'm like, the number of times I've had this with both my son and my daughter, to a point where I remember there was a time in the restaurant, and my husband left, and my daughter threw a fit to the point where some waitress came and asked me if she's my child. I remember feeling like, oh my
No,
God,
I know.
But now that she's, at least I don't know about my son, but my daughter is getting up age where I'm seeing her personality. I see that's exactly me. You know what I mean? It's not housed in me.
Yeah, it's
The package
the packaging isn't yours.
Like, if we work together, someone would assume I'm the nanny or something. But it's
Can I tell you a story?
yeah.
This also ties to the previous thing about like the role of fathers. But I took the kids. I think it was both of them. I feel like it was both of them, but I might be remembering this wrong. But anyway, I took them to Jaffrey. This one time, it wasn't even a daddy day. It was just that I think they needed a break, or they were
A bit,
overstimulated or something. But I decided we're going to go to Jaffrey, you're going to do like the playground thing, I'm going to walk around with you a little bit, like we're going to get all of this energy out, and then we'll go back home. So we go to Jaffrey, and it's like the sports club, and they have this big ring to walk around, and then there's like a playground in the back. So we get all the energies out. They have some time there, get a little treat at the little coffee shop there. And, you know, everybody's now in what I assumed was a good space.
Yeah.
And then we start walking out. And again, I think I had both of them. I think I had both of them, but regardless, let's assume it was one of them.
Yeah.
We start walking out, and something triggered my child to just go, I don't like you anymore, right? And he just got really mad, and he's like, I want my mommy. Where's my mommy?
Oh my
God. And he's
God.
running up to people in the parking lot, right? So he runs to these two ladies who are just about to get into their car, and like grabs their dresses and like, where's my mommy? I want my mom. And I walked up, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm the
the dad.
father.
Yeah.
So, you know. And she's like, no, where's the mom? And I'm like,
Oh
no,
my
I left
God.
her at home. And, you know, I did this thing back then where I just leave the house without my phone.
Oh no.
So
this
in my
is-
head, I'm just like, okay, how do I prove this?
Yeah. This is my child.
Yeah, how do I prove? Because it doesn't look anything like
my
me. It looks
God.
exactly. Yeah, and he went off, and I think that's why I think it was both of them, because I remember both ladies getting involved, and then, and this is why I think there were two of the two kids, because one of them said, "Stop it, Daddy," and
okay.
then they were like,
Okay,
"Oh,
fine. Okay, fine.
and I was like, you know.
Yo, you almost lost your kids there.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. I was probably going to go to jail just
Yeah,
because,
like,
like,
yeah, trying to
and I
abduct
guess
some
it
kids.
again. I understand. I understand where this is coming from, but at some point, you know,
Yeah.
if it was you, I don't think anyone would be like, no,
No,
put that baby
no,
down.
eventually.
Yeah,
Like,
eventually they
maybe
just
on a
like
couple,
let it
yeah,
go.
but it would never be like, what are you trying
Yeah,
to
no,
do?
I was getting the full "don't be a kidnapper" over
Oh
here.
my
Like,
God.
yeah,
And it's your
it
own
was.
kids. Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
so remember that one vividly ish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. At least you all made it home. And it was you made it home. It
Yeah.
was not news. You survived.
Yeah.
In what ways has your life changed since you became a dad?
Oh, like in every possible way. Yeah.
What are the highlights? Like the big ones, the ones you're like, wow, I would never be here or do this or think this way if I wasn't a dad.
The easy one is that I'd say I'm more responsible. But the honest, like, biggest change that's happened is that I've had to question my values a
Okay.
lot. I've had to take time and intentionally step back and say, is this the right thing when I think something is the right thing? That doesn't mean my values changed.
Yeah.
It just means I have a different understanding of what holds value within my system,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I know that sounds abstract, but when you think about it, that's kind of like saying, oh, I changed the structure of my skeleton. The body
big.
might be the same, but the
Yeah.
foundation is
It's
different.
different,
So
yeah.
I move a bit differently when I'm trying to do certain things. I try to do things with a bit more purpose and a bit more intention, and I'm very, very okay with drawing hard boundaries around certain things. Yeah, like if you call me after 6 p.m., I'm
not
so
happening.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just so sorry. Like, that is 100% going
Yeah.
to be at the discretion of the babies. And if they are around, then it waits until the next day. Yeah. And then I've lost clients because of this, but then I'm also at the point of, if you cannot appreciate that there's no emergency that's going to come for your big corporate company, if I just focus on my children for a few
Well,
hours, then we probably don't align enough that you should be paying me for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You talked about moms having a ton of support around us, right?
Decent amount,
We're
yeah.
just like, I mean, yes, we always want more, but there are groups, there are pockets, there are platforms, even like this one that exist to just bring
Oh,
some
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of relatability, right? When you're going through a thing, right? Have you ever been able to find something like that for yourself?
find something like that, yes. For myself, no. So I've found spaces that are like that, but then they always just, this is no criticism to any one of them. I think a lot of people are doing a lot of amazing things in this space. And a lot of those platforms, especially the global ones, are really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
But I feel like they all have a specific agenda, and sometimes you get lost in the agenda instead of the thing itself. We had this conversation with Zayn the other day, and one of the things I said is I don't think a lot of dad communities are about parenting.
What
They're
are they
about manhood.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, say for example, the other day, just because of the context of how this is happening, this is going to be weird. So, the other day, I saw an invite for a dad event, an event for dads, that was being hosted by the dude who just walked out, right? That's how I know him. He doesn't remember me from that.
Oh,
But
wait, I remember I've seen that invite.
you saw
Yeah,
that,
I've seen
right?
it, yeah.
But here's the thing. They said, okay, so you should come for this dad event. It's a good time for dads to connect. We will have nyama choma, talk about school fees. Like, at what part of this are we going to say, let's talk about parenting? Because I feel like that's the hardest thing about being a dad, right? It's like figuring out how to connect with your children in a meaningful way and contribute to their lives, blah, blah. The school fees thing is a financial problem. That's not a thing you
not
need
the
to
thing.
talk to somebody
Yeah.
other than a banker about. Like,
Yeah.
like I get
Yeah,
it if
fair
you want
enough.
to do that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, like, not everything is networking, meat, beer, and,
Nyam chom and-
like I feel like what a lot of those communities have turned into is spaces where you sit shoulder to shoulder and look out at a problem and discuss it, and not spaces where you sit face to face and have one-on-one conversations. Because what I've seen with mom communities, including like the wonderful one my wife has built, Playroom, Play Academy Africa. Please follow playroom.ke, playacademy.africa.
Yeah.
I didn't even plug my own handles. Anyway,
It'll come.
they'll
Yeah,
be here.
It'll be somewhere.
So I think the thing that I've seen with them is that people get to the point where they'll write to you, they get to know you, they'll check in on you.
Yep.
You have relationships that you form online.
Yep.
The dads that write to me, it's almost like they're in a hurry to end the conversation. And 99% of the time, it's for a very specific piece of information.
Yeah.
The most meaningful conversations I've had with dads were when I started talking about vasectomies.
Yes.
And 85% of those conversations were just, how much does it cost? How long will it take until I can walk properly? Am I going to lose my libido? It was like FAQs that you could Google. But then 15% of those conversations are real people just trying to understand, like real questions. Dads trying to figure out how things would go and what the options were. And, is getting your tubes tied really that bad for moms? Because I spoke out really aggressively against the risks that mothers have to take for contraception that dads don't have any idea about. They just ask for these things like it just, Anyway, in that space, we had a lot of real conversations. But the other ones, oh man, it's spectator sport. I know moms who follow my account so that their husbands can see my content.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
You see, the problem there is that nobody wants to have a face-to-face conversation. So that's part of the reason why I'm even doing the podcast I was telling you about, is so that I can have these moments where I sit down with a dad, and not on Instagram Live, because that was nice, but I want to sit down with you. I want to have this face-to-face, because I think it makes a big difference for us to start modeling a new way to build communities as a father, as a man, as a parent, that is more inclusive and more, what's the word? Progressive a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd actually never even seen that intersection between manhood and parenting, right? Because a lot of what I have seen now that I think about is all about the manhood part, but this nitty-gritty part of parenting and the choices that we make and how we sit with them and how we do that, it doesn't really exist. I don't see it, right?
Yeah. And
So are we to expect podcast. Like, so to be honest, like, I don't know how many times I've talked to you about this
Yeah.
situation. I feel like
Yeah.
Addy, I'm like, I don't know what other way I should. You know, every time someone asks, is there like a dude version of this? I'm like,
Yeah.
listen,
There
I feel
will
like there
be.
should be one.
There
It doesn't
will
need to
be.
look like this,
Yeah.
but I have a very great nomination of who should be doing this.
There
right?
will be. There are two I can talk about.
Okay.
One in not a lot of detail. The first one might have dropped. So I'm taking Two Dads Talking and I'm making it a podcast. And I think I can say this if this is going to be after Father's Day. The first guest is going to be my initial first guest on the lives. How Two Dads Talking started was me and Mutu Amadeka talking about vasectomies.
Yep.
So we're going to actually do this as a video podcast thing. You know, depending on schedule, it should be out. If it's not out, it's in the works.
It's coming.
But we've already discussed it.
Yeah.
So Two Dads Talking will become regular. I want to try and make it weekly. We'll see how that goes. It really is also subject to availability of dads. It's you'd be surprised how difficult it is to get dads to like sit down and talk. But I'm gonna try. A lot of them, we know each other now. I just need to get them to come sit down with me.
Yeah.
Then the second one I'm working on with someone else. So that I can't give a lot of details about, but someone very cool. We had this really nice idea of coming up with. It's going to be content around fatherhood, but it's not specifically about parenting. It's more so about, I guess, the creativity parenting inspires. So that's coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, coming. There's a. I don't want to like give too
It's
much.
Okay, I'll wait. It's
But
fine.
that one is coming
Yeah.
up pretty soon. They should be available. The person who I'm working on this with is like doing 10 million other things, like a super creative, fantastic guy. But that should be coming up later on. And then there's one last one, which is going to be user generated. But I need to set it up before I talk about it because it's very easy for someone to take the idea and run with it.
Okay.
So I finished registering it about a month ago. I'm trying to set up the systems around it. But that's probably going to be July. So June, Two Dads Talking, July,
The
the user-generated one. And then sometime in Q3, the creativity one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all here for it. I think.
Let's pray I can do all these things.
No, you can.
Yeah.
No, you can.
Yeah.
You can. You
But-
just need to.
Yeah, but like I said, my primary
Do it.
job is like fatherhood,
Yep,
and then I
yep,
freelance
yep.
at everything else. So if you don't see it live, it's
Yeah.
because I was doing something
It's
dad
okay.
related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One very forgiving community is this one. Yeah, it's a very forgiving one.
Yeah.
And it is a time to plug in your handles because we have come to the end.
Oh, okay,
I don't
cool.
know how to graciously end things, so I just.
I don't think anything needs to graciously end.
Okay.
Yeah, I think most things come to natural ends,
Yeah.
and we just need to accept them. So handles Growing Father for all the parenting content. If you're interested in any of my professional content marketing or digital marketing stuff, it's just said content. So said.content, CED.content. There's nothing much on there right now because you know how chefs don't cook their own food?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm busy creating other people's content, so I'm terrible at creating my
Your
own.
own, yeah.
But it's there, and I'm
Okay.
going to try and be a bit more active on both. But yeah, Growing Father is the one to check out right now.
I want to thank Sed for taking part in this episode. Do make sure to check out his content and all the amazing series he's done so far on Two Talking Dads on Instagram Live. There's lots and lots of wisdom to be gathered there. Music in this episode by Blue Dot Sessions. This episode was shot and edited by Sema Box Africa. Thanks, guys. There is a video version of this episode on YouTube, so do make sure to check that out as well. Till next time, bye.